Raynald of Châtillon was a knight who served in the Second Crusade and remained in the Holy Land after its defeat. Reynald was an enormously controversial character in his own lifetime and beyond. Muslim writers often took him to be the chief enemy of Islam. Through marriage he ruled as Prince of Antioch from 1153 to 1160. During this time he was in conflict with the Byzantine Emperor Manuel I Comnenus and attacked Cyprus, but later was forced to submit to the emperor. Captured by the Muslims in 1161, he was imprisoned in Aleppo for 15 years. Through his second marriage he became Lord of Ultra-Jourdain in 1177. In the same year, he led the Crusader army that defeated Saladin at the Battle of Montgazard. Later he broke a truce with Saladin, attacking several Muslim caravans and sending pirate ships into the Red Sea towards Mecca and Medina. Captured at the Battle of Hattin, where the Crusaders were decisively defeated, he was executed by Saladin himself. Early years, conflict with Emperor Manuel I, imprisonment. Reynald's origins are obscure. Ducange believed he was from Châtillon-sur-Loire, but according to Jean Richard, he was a son of Hervé II of Donzy, and he inherited Châtillon-sur-Loing sometime before joining the Second Crusade in 1147. In the east, he entered the service of Constance of Antioch, whose first husband Raymond of Poitiers had died in 1149. She married Reynald in secret in 1153, without consulting her first cousin and liege lord, King Baldwin III of Jerusalem. Neither King Baldwin nor Mary of Limoges, the Latin Patriarch of Antioch, approved of Constance's choice of a husband of such low birth. With Constance he had a daughter, Agnes of Châtillon, in 1154. In 1156 Reynald claimed that the Byzantine Emperor Manuel I Comnenus had reneged on his promise to pay Reynald a sum of money, and vowed to attack the island of Cyprus in revenge. When Amory, the Latin Patriarch of Antioch, refused to finance this expedition, Reynald had the Patriarch seized, stripped naked and then brutally beaten. His tormentors then covered him in honey, and left him in the burning sun on top of the citadel. When the Patriarch was released, he collapsed in exhaustion and agreed to finance Reynald's expedition against Cyprus. Reynald, with his Armenian allies, attacked Cyprus and its Christian inhabitants, subjecting the island to a 3-week orgy of violence. As the historian Sir Stephen Runciman remarked, the murder and rapine was on a scale that the Huns and Mongols might have envied. The Emperor Manuel I Comnenus raised an army and began a march into Syria. Faced with a much larger and more powerful force, Reynald was forced to grovel, barefoot and shabby, before the emperor's throne for forgiveness. In 1159 Reynald was forced to pay homage to Manuel as punishment for his attack, promising to accept a Greek patriarch in Antioch. When Manuel came to Antioch later that year to meet with Baldwin III, king of Jerusalem, Reynald was forced to lead Manuel's horse into the city. Soon after this, in 1161, Reynald was captured by the Muslims while he was engaged in a plundering raid against peasants of the neighborhood of Marish. He was confined at Aleppo for the next 15 years. He was ransomed by his supporters in Jerusalem for the extraordinary sum of 120,000 gold dinars in 1176. By that time, his stepdaughter Maria had become empress, having married Emperor Manuel I in 1161. His wife Constance had died in 1163, and their daughter Agnes had become Queen of Hungary by marriage. Rise to prominence. In 1174, the 13-year-old leper Baldwin IV had become King of Jerusalem. Reynald rose to a powerful position in the kingdom. He served as the king's envoy to Emperor Manuel and was rewarded with marriage to Stephanie, the wealthy widow of both Humphrey III of Turon and Miles of Plancy, and the heiress of the lordship of Ultra-Jourdain, including the castles Carrick and Montreal to the southeast of the Dead Sea. These fortresses controlled the trade routes between Egypt and Damascus and gave Reynald access to the Red Sea. He became notorious for his wanton cruelty at Carrick. often having his enemies and hostages flung from its castle walls to be dashed to pieces on the rocks below. In November 1177, heading the army of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, he helped King Baldwin defeat Saladin at the Battle of Montgisard. Saladin narrowly escaped. In spite of a truce between Saladin and the king negotiated in 1180, Reynald plundered a Muslim pilgrim caravan in 1182. Saladin demanded reparations from Baldwin IV, who replied that he was unable to control his unruly vassal. As a result, war broke out between Saladin and the Latin kingdom in 1182. In the course of the hostilities, Reynald launched ships on the Red Sea, partly for piracy, but partly as a threat against Mecca and Medina, challenging Islam in its own holy places. His pirates ravaged villages up and down the Red Sea, before being captured by the army of al-Adalai only a few miles from Medina. Although Reynald's pirates were taken to Cairo and beheaded, Reynald himself escaped to the Moab. Saladin vowed to behead Reynald himself, and at the end of the year Saladin attacked Carrick. During the marriage of Reynald's stepson Humphrey IV of Toronto, Isabella of Jerusalem, half-sister of King Baldwin IV, the siege was raised by Count Raymond III of Tripoli, and Reynald was quiet until 1186. That year he allied with Sibylla and Guy of Lusignan against Count Raymond, and his influence contributed to the recognition of Guy as King of Jerusalem. Although Raymond and the Ibelins were attempting to advance the claim of his stepson Humphrey's wife Princess Isabella, Humphrey remained loyal to his stepfather and Guy. In 1185 the Crusaders and Saladin signed another truce for 4 years. In 1186 Reynald attacked a large Muslim caravan traveling between Cairo and Damascus. He took all the merchants and their families prisoner, seized a large amount of booty and refused to receive envoys from Saladin demanding compensation. This led directly to the end of the truce. Saladin sent troops to protect a later caravan in which his sister was returning from a pilgrimage to Mecca. Later writers conflated these two incidents, claiming erroneously that Saladin's sister, aunt, or even mother, had been taken prisoner. But this is contradicted by Arabic sources, such as Abu Shrama and Ibn al-Atiyah. King Guy chastised Reynald in an attempt to appease Saladin, but Reynald replied that he was lord of his own lands and that he had made no peace with Saladin. Saladin swore that Reynald would be executed if he was ever taken prisoner. Capture and execution. In 1187 Saladin invaded the kingdom and decisively defeated the Crusaders at the Battle of Hattin. The battle left Saladin with many prisoners. Most prominent among them were Reynald and King Guy, both of whom Saladin ordered brought to his tent. The chronicler Imad ad-Din al-Isfahani, who was present at the scene, relates, Saladin invited the king, Guy, to sit beside him, and when Arnat, Reynald, entered in his turn, he seated him next to his king and reminded him of his misdeeds. How many times have you sworn an oath and violated it? How many times have you signed agreements you have never respected? Reynald answered through a translator, Kings have always acted thus. I did nothing more. During this time King Guy was gasping with thirst, his head dangling as though drunk, his face betraying great fright. Saladin spoke reassuring words to him, had cold water brought, and offered it to him. The king drank, then handed what remained to Reynald, who slaked his thirst in turn. The Sultan then said to Guy, You did not ask permission before giving him water. I am therefore not obliged to grant him mercy. After pronouncing these words, the Sultan smiled, mounted his horse, and rode off, leaving the captives in terror. He supervised the return of the troops, and then came back to his tent. He ordered Reynald brought there, then advanced before him, sword in hand, and struck him between the neck and the shoulder blade. When Reynald fell, he cut off his head and dragged the body by its feet to the king, who began to tremble. Seeing him thus upset, Saladin said to him in a reassuring tone, This man was killed only because of his maleficence and perfidy. Seeing the execution of Reynald, Guy of Lusignan feared he would be next, but his life was spared by Saladin, who said of the execution, "It is not the wont of kings to kill kings, but that man had transgressed all bounds, and therefore did I treat him thus." Children. Reynald and Constance had two daughters, Agnes de Châtillon, who married the Hungarian prince Beirut, who later became King Beirut III of Hungary. Jeanne de Châtillon, probably the second wife of Marquis Boniface I of Montferrat. From his second marriage with Stephanie de Milly he had two children, a son and a daughter. Raynald of Châtillon, who died young. Alex of Châtillon, who married Azo d'Este. In media, the Passio Reginaldi, Principus Antiochi, an account of Reynald's death, was written by Peter of Blois c. 1189. Reynald is portrayed in the 1963 Egyptian movie Al-Nasser Salah ad-Din. A slightly fictionalized version of Reynald is played by Brendan Gleeson in the 2005 movie Kingdom of Heaven. Reynald is portrayed in a positive light, as a powerfully charismatic figure in the biographic novel Renaud's Last Crusade by Gad Shimron, published in Hebrew in 2011. Reynald is featured as an NPC in the game Age of Empires 2. The Age of Kings as an antagonist in Saladin's campaign. Reynald is also mentioned in the game Stronghold Crusader during the Saladin campaign. Reynald is a playable family member of the Principality of Antioch faction in Medieval 2. Total War's Crusades expansion. In keeping with his historical reputation, he has a very high level of dread. In the novel The Knights of Dark Renown, by author Graham Shelby, Reynald is depicted as the malevolent Red Wolf of Carrick. Appears as a NPC in the computer game Baldur's Gate 2, in the Bridge district of the city of Athkatla. In the historical Knights Templar trilogy by the Swedish author Jan Giller, Reynald is depicted as a scheming, incompetent and selfish villain accelerating the loss of the Holy Land to Saladin. In the novel Night Crusader by Ronald Welch, 1954, Raynald de Châtillon is depicted as a brave but piratical character who is mainly responsible for the debacle that was the Battle of Hattin. In the historical fiction novels by Jack White, Knights of the Black and White, and Standard of Honor, Reynald is depicted as a Templar knight, partially responsible for the loss at the Battle of Hattin. In Jack White's Saladin trilogy, fictional Saxon crusader John of Châtillon fights for Châtillon but who is betrayed during a failed siege of Aleppo. Châtillon is bribed by the Saracen occupiers of the town to lift the siege. John witnesses the deal and, during a later fight against some Saracens from the town, is seemingly killed by Châtillon's commander, only to survive and be sold into slavery, being bought by a young Saladin. Sarah Bryant's Sanddaughter offers a portrayal of the events from December 1186 to the Battle of Hattin in July 1187.